my little Luxes. Welcome back to another Scary Stories My Father Told Me. And I am your host, charsieluxxx. And welcome to another episode of Scary Stories. And what better time of the year to tell ghost stories and scary stories than during spooky season? And obviously, thanks to corporate America and everything and their greed, we are seeing holidays being pushed earlier and earlier every single year. This is the earliest I have ever seen Halloween decorations, costumes, all of that stuff. This is the earliest I have ever seen stuff start coming out. Because I was seeing stuff back in July, which is insane to think about. But what better story to tell than the one that I'm about to tell you today? Because this is all about having a moral story to tell your children and to just tell anybody as a warning sign of to not be too greedy. So what better time than to share this little spooky tale with you? The grinding stone that ground flour by itself. There had been another great famine throughout the land. The villagers looked thin and pale for lack of food. Only one family appeared healthy and well. This was the household of Anansi's cousin. Anansi was unable to understand this, and felt sure his cousin was getting food in some way. The greedy fellow determined to find out the secret. What had happened was this. Spider's cousin, while hunting one morning, had discovered a wonderful stone. The stone lay on the grass in the forest and ground flour on its own accord. Nearby ran a stream of honey. Kofi was delighted. He sat down and had a good meal. Not being a greedy man, he took away with him only enough for his family's needs. Each morning he returned to the stone and got sufficient food for that day. In this manner, he and his family kept well and plump, while the surrounding villagers were starved and miserable looking. Anansi gave him no peace till he promised to show him the stone. This he was most unwilling to do, knowing his cousin's wicked ways. He felt sure that when Anansi saw the stone, he would not be content to take only what he needed. However, Anansi troubled him so much with questions that at last he promised. He told Anansi that they would start next morning, as soon as the women set about their work. Anansi was too impatient to wait. In the middle of the night, he bade his children get up and make a noise with the pots, as if they were the women at work. Spider at once ran and wakened his cousin, saying, "Quick, it is time to start." His cousin, however, saw he had been tricked, and went back to bed again, saying he would not start till the women were sweeping. No sooner was he asleep again than Spider made his children take brooms and begin to sweep very noisily. He roused Kofi once more, saying, "It is time we had started." Once more, his cousin refused to set off, saying it was only another trick of Spider's. He again returned to bed and to sleep. This time, Spider slipped into his cousin's room and cut a hole in the bottom of his bag, which he then filled with ashes. After that, he went off and left Kofi in peace. When morning came, the cousin awoke. Seeing no sign of Spider, he very gladly set off alone to the forest, thinking he had got rid of the tiresome fellow. He was no sooner seated by the stone, however, than Anansi appeared, having followed him by the trail of ashes. "Aha!" he cried. "Here is plenty of food for all. No more need to starve." "Hush," said his cousin. "You must not shout here. The place is too wonderful. Sit down quietly and eat." They had a good meal, and Kofi prepared to return home with enough for his family. "No, no," cried Anansi. "I am going to take the stone." In vain did his friend try to overcome his greed. Anansi insisted on putting the stone on his head and setting out for the village. "Spider, Spider, put me down," said the stone. "The pig came and drank and went away. The antelope came and fed and went away. Spider, Spider, put me down." Spider, however, refused to listen. He carried the stone from village to village, selling flour, until his bag was full of money. He then set out for home. Having reached his hut and feeling very tired, he prepared to put the stone down. But the stone refused to be moved from his head. It stuck fast there, and no efforts could displace it. The weight of it very soon grew too much for Anansi, and ground him down into small pieces, which were completely covered over by the stone. That is why we often find tiny spiders gathered together under large stones. Now we could say poor Spider Spider, but you know what? I think Spider got his just desserts because, he couldn't be like his cousin Kofi, who was just ecstatic to see this stone where it was and was just happy to leave it alone and only took what he needed, never took more. And it's one of those things where, yes, Kofi could have provided the secret for everyone, but we know what happens, especially in a time where they were in famine and that they were all starving. The fact is that people usually generally go into survival mode and get very greedy. They won't just take what they need. So we can safely say that Anansi, who in his arrogant ways and just being greedy, not only thought he was going to take the stone, but he thought he was going to use it to his advantage to make money, and was selling flour to these poor, starving people of the village. But this is also, like I said, a huge story of morality. It's the same idea of what the Brothers Grimm fairy tales were about. They were always to provide a lesson. No, there's so many stories out there. Like, tell me some stories that you can remember where they're talking about something that happens in real life, and it's provided in the fairy tale or the urban legend and explaining how it came to be. So this one's explanation was, oh, this is why you always find tiny spiders all together underneath big rocks and stones. That Spider, who in his greediness became tiny spiders because of this situation. Obviously, we know that that's not true. It's just folklore and superstition, myth, but that's the beauty in it, is that it's not necessarily about the fact of what was the end result to what happened to Spider. It's the lesson to provide to all of us as people to stop being greedy, take only what you need. And this story was made centuries ago. So think about that. And it still can be a very valuable lesson to us today. And what better way than thinking perfect example of 2020 during quarantine and when people went out of their mind thinking that toilet paper was running out of stock. People were trying to buy more than what they needed. Instead of just coming in and buying what they needed, buying one package of toilet paper rolls, they were coming in and stocking up on it. And I know of several people that were like buying the store out, that they would come in and just buy everything that they had in stock and were storing it in like shops and sheds and garages because they didn't have the proper room to have all this toilet paper in their home. So it is one of those weird things where it's like if people just would have went into the store and just bought what they needed, there was plenty of toilet paper to go around. And one of my other best examples I can give is the fact that my husband at the time had worked for retail, and he flat out said that the store that he worked at were getting shipments in every other day, if not every day, to restock the toilet paper because it wasn't running out. It just was fear. There was a fear tactic that our news was trying to use and putting people into a panic, and they were fear buying. So, perfect example. You don't need a huge plethora of toilet paper. You just need what you need. You don't have to have more than that. So, this was a superb example to have, and that we need to remember to start fighting against corporate greed because things are getting ridiculous. And what better way than to tell a very old story about don't be greedy, only take what you need. But thank you so much for joining me here on another Scary Stories My Father Told Me. And like I said, I am super happy and excited to be celebrating spooky season. And on my X, I have been doing my cosplay countdown again for Thirsty for Halloween. But I'm also doing the same on my Patreon. But I am providing different photos on my Patreon. In fact, several photos that have not ever been seen before. So, exclusive content to there, because that's what my Patreon is. It's meant to be special. And I'm also resharing a lot of my old lewd photos as well. Getting more comfortable, just bringing back some of my old work that I spent so much time on, and just bringing them on there and letting everybody enjoy the different costumes that I've done throughout the years. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me here. And also, if you would like to follow me on my other socials, there'll be a link in the description down below, including one to my Etsy shop where I sell my art, and a few of my cosplay photography shots, which, if wanted, I can always sign them as well for you. And also a link to my Patreon, and a huge thank you to everyone who comes and joins me on my Patreon, because your support helps me to keep growing and doing better and, well, bigger and better things on here. And a special shout out to two brand new Patreon members. I'm excited to welcome LJ Christensen and the No Pants Ninja. So, thank you so much for joining my membership and becoming a part of the Luxxy family. And on the screen, you can just see a general shout out to all of my members, and a special shout out to my ultimate Luxes. And that would be the No Pants Ninja, LJ Christensen, and to Kurt. And my tier system has changed, so my ultimate Luxes are now at $10. And also, my lower tier is at $5, which you basically have access to everything at my tiers at this point. That I'm trying to make it as fair as possible for everybody, and I just want to provide quality content for everybody that is there, and I just appreciate everybody that's there with me. But anyway, I have rambled on enough about my Patreon. So please come join me in the afterlife of the party, because I am the afterlife of the party. And always remember to slay, subscribe, like, and always be yourself. And remember to stay spooky for this wonderful time of year. Until next time, my little Luxes, have a Luxy Charms kind of day. Bye.